A piercing scream shattered the silence of the dawn. Sierra raced barefoot across the deserted park, her small feet pounding against the damp earth of the path. Her eyes, large and dark, reflected pure terror as she approached the massive oak that dominated the center of the park. The faint cry that had awakened her grew clearer with each step. What she saw stopped her dead in her tracks. A small bundle wrapped in dirty blankets hung from one of the tree's lower branches, tied with a frayed rope that looked like it could snap at any moment. The crying was coming from inside. "A baby!" Sierra exclaimed, her heart pounding. The girl with her ragged clothes and matted hair didn't hesitate for a second. She scrambled up the trunk of the tree with the agility that only life on the streets provides, reached the branch, and with trembling fingers began to untie the knot that held the baby. The rope was crumbling between her fingers, rotted from dampness threatening to give way at any moment. "Don't be scared, little one," she whispered as she worked at the knots. "Sierra's here. No one's going to hurt you." When she finally freed the baby, she cradled him against her chest, protecting him with a maternal fierceness that contrasted with her own frailty. The little one, only a few weeks old, had pale skin and slightly bluish lips. His breathing was shallow, ragged. "I have to get help," Sierra thought as she carefully climbed down the tree. The girl knew the city well. She had lived on its streets for as long as she could remember, surviving on the charity of others and what she could scavenge. She knew that County General Hospital was several blocks away, but she also knew there was no time to lose. She ran, with all her might, shielding the baby in her arms, ignoring the stones that cut her bare feet and the stares of the few early-morning passers-by. The baby had become unsettlingly silent, and this only fueled her run. Reaching the emergency entrance of the hospital, Sierra was breathless. Her dirty face was streaked with tears of desperation. "Help, please, help!" she cried with all the strength she had left. A nurse approached, taking the baby from her arms with professional but careful gestures. "What happened, honey?" he asked as he quickly examined the baby. He was hanging from a tree," Sierra explained between gasps. "Someone left him there, tied with a rope." The nurse immediately called the doctors on duty, and within seconds a medical team surrounded the little one, working frantically to stabilize him. Sierra watched from a corner, invisible to the staff, focused on saving the baby's life. She saw them connect him to machines, place an oxygen mask over his tiny face, and then she saw him. A doctor with graying hair and a kind expression stopped dead in his tracks at the sight of the baby. Dr. Raymond Valverde, head of pediatrics, had handled thousands of emergencies in his career, but something about this case left him paralyzed. His face drained of color as he slowly approached the baby as if he were seeing a ghost. "Dr. Valverde?" a nurse asked, alarmed by his strange reaction. Raymond didn't answer. With trembling hands, he gently pulled aside the blanket covering the baby, revealing a small silver locket hanging from the little one's neck. Upon seeing it, he fell to his knees beside the stretcher, tears streaming uncontrollably from his eyes. "It can't be. It can't be," he repeated in a low voice as he caressed the baby's face with infinite tenderness. Sierra, confused and scared, approached timidly. "Is the baby going to be okay, Mr. Doctor?" she asked with a trembling voice. Raymond looked up, noticing the little street urchin for the first time. His gaze, though blurred by tears, filled with such intense gratitude that Sierra took a step back. "You brought him, didn't you?" Raymond asked, his voice choked with emotion. "You saved this baby." Sierra nodded, unsure what to say. "Thank you," Raymond whispered, getting up with difficulty. "You don't know what you've done today. You've saved more than just a life." The doctor wiped away his tears and regained his professional composure. With renewed energy, he began to give instructions to the team, personally monitoring every detail of the baby's treatment. Sierra watched, fascinated by the transformation. A nurse approached the girl, offering her a glass of water and a clean blanket. "You should stay, honey," she said kindly. "Dr. Valverde will want to talk to you when the baby is stable." "Why did the doctor cry?" Sierra asked, drinking the water eagerly. The nurse looked towards where Raymond was working tirelessly over the baby. "I don't know," she replied. "I've never seen him like this. But that locket, it's like he recognized it." The hours passed slowly. The baby was stabilized and transferred to the neonatal intensive care unit. Sierra, exhausted from the stress and the run, had fallen asleep in a chair in the waiting room, wrapped in the blanket they had given her. It was the soft touch of a hand on her shoulder that awakened her. Opening her eyes, she met the tired but serene gaze of Dr. Valverde. "The baby is out of danger," he informed her with a smile. "Thanks to you, he arrived in time." Sierra smiled, relieved. "Can I see him?" she asked timidly. Raymond nodded and guided her through the hospital corridors to the NICU. There, in a small incubator, rested the baby, his skin regaining a healthy color, his breathing now regular and calm. "It's a boy," Raymond explained, "a very strong boy." Sierra watched the baby through the glass, marveling at how small and fragile he seemed, and at the same time at his incredible will to live. "Why did you cry when you saw him, Doctor?" she dared to ask finally. Raymond sighed deeply, as if deciding how much to reveal. "That locket he's wearing," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "It's identical to the one my grandson wore when—" He stopped, unable to continue. Sierra waited patiently, sensing that she was about to hear something important. "When my grandson disappeared," Raymond finally completed, his voice laden with an ancient but still living pain. "A long time ago, my daughter Luciana and her husband were victims of an accident. She survived but lost her memory. Her husband passed away. My grandson, just a newborn then, disappeared without a trace. The police were never able to find him." Sierra's eyes widened, beginning to understand. "Do you think this baby is—" "I don't know," Raymond interrupted, running a hand over his tired face. "It seems impossible. So many years have passed. This baby is a newborn. But that locket, it's a family heirloom made especially for my grandson. There aren't two alike." A silence filled with questions settled between them as they both watched the little one sleep, oblivious to the mystery surrounding him. "I need to find out who left this baby in that tree," Raymond finally said, his voice regaining firmness. "And why he's wearing my grandson's locket." Sierra nodded, feeling that somehow her destiny had just become intertwined with that of this strange baby and the sad-eyed doctor. What had begun as an act of compassion was turning into something much bigger, a mystery that had perhaps been waiting years to be solved. "I'll help you, Doctor," she affirmed with a determination uncharacteristic of her age. "I know all the streets and a lot of people. Someone must have seen something." Raymond looked at the little street urchin with new admiration. In her eyes, he saw an intelligence and a strength that went far beyond her years. "Thank you, Sierra," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But first I think you need to get some proper rest and something to eat. And maybe you could tell me more about yourself. Is there anyone we should notify? Are your parents worried?" The girl looked down, her expression turning somber. "I don't have parents, Doctor. I don't have anyone." Raymond felt his heart sink at these words, spoken with such naturalness and resignation. "I understand," he replied softly. "In that case, Sierra, I think we have a lot to talk about. But first, let's take care of your immediate needs." As he guided her towards the hospital cafeteria, Raymond couldn't stop thinking about the strange coincidence that had led this girl to find the baby with his family's locket. Or perhaps it wasn't a coincidence at all. The locket, the abandoned baby, the homeless girl. Raymond felt he was facing the pieces of a puzzle that had been unsolved for too long. And for the first time in many years, he also felt a spark of hope. What neither of them knew was that, at that very moment, an elegant-looking woman with a tormented gaze was entering the hospital, anxiously asking about a baby that had been found that morning. The woman's name was Luciana Valverde, Raymond's daughter, and she was about to trigger the next chapter of this story. Luciana Valverde strode through the hospital corridors with hurried steps. Her elegant figure, clad in an impeccable tailored suit, contrasted with her pale face and the look of anguish that clouded her beautiful eyes. The nurses watched her with curiosity as she asked insistently about the baby who had been rescued that morning. I need to see him, she repeated in a trembling voice. Please, it's urgent. Finally, a nurse led her to the head of pediatrics office, explaining that Dr. Valverde was personally in charge of the case. Luciana stopped dead in her tracks upon hearing that name. Valverde? Dr. Raymond Valverde? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, ma'am. Do you know him? Luciana didn't answer. A whirlwind of emotions crossed her face as she resumed her path, now with a hesitant step. Meanwhile, in the hospital cafeteria, Raymond watched tenderly as Sierra devoured a sandwich and a glass of milk. The girl ate with the avidity of someone who doesn't know when they'll have another meal, but without losing a certain dignity that the doctor found moving. Better? Raymond asked when the girl finished. Sierra nodded, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Thank you, doctor. No one's been so kind to me since... She interrupted herself, as if she had been about to reveal something painful. Since when, Sierra? Raymond asked softly. The girl looked away, fiddling with her napkin. Since I lived with my grandma, she finally replied. She took care of me. She told me stories. She made me feel important. And what happened to her? She went to heaven, Sierra replied simply. I was left alone in our little house, but then people came and said I couldn't stay there. They were going to take me to a place with other kids, but I ran away. My grandma always said we should take care of ourselves. Raymond felt a deep sadness hearing the girl's story. So many years dedicated to medicine, and he still found it difficult to accept that there were children like Sierra surviving alone on the streets, invisible to the society that should protect them. You're very brave, Sierra, he said sincerely. And very smart, too. Not everyone would have acted the way you did this morning. The girl blushed slightly, not used to receiving compliments. I just did what I had to do, she mumbled. But, Doctor, what will happen now to the baby and with the locket? Do you really think it has something to do with your grandson? Before Raymond could answer, a nurse rushed to their table. Dr. Valverde, excuse the interruption, she said with obvious nervousness. There's a woman asking about the baby. She says it's urgent. Did she identify herself? Raymond asked, suddenly alert. Yes, sir, it's your daughter, doctor. It's Miss Luciana. Raymond's face paled. He stood up so abruptly that he almost knocked over his coffee cup. Where is she? He asked urgently. I left her in your office, doctor. I told her to wait for you there. Raymond turned to Sierra, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. Sensing the sudden tension, Sierra, I need you to come with me, he said, extending his hand towards the girl. I think we're about to discover something important. The girl took his hand without hesitation, and together they quickly headed towards the doctor's office. As they walked, Raymond tried to gather his thoughts. What did Luciana know about the baby? How had she found out so quickly about his discovery? And most importantly, what did she have to do with the family locket that the little one was wearing? Reaching the door of his office, Raymond stopped for a moment, gently squeezing Sierra's hand. Whatever happens in there, stay by my side, okay? He asked her in a low voice. The girl nodded, sensing the gravity of the moment. Raymond opened the door. Luciana was standing by the window with her back to them. Hearing the door, she turned slowly. Her face, so similar to Raymond's, showed signs of recent crying. Dad, she said simply, her voice breaking on that single word. Father and daughter stared at each other in silence, years of distance and secrets floating between them like an invisible barrier. Sierra, from her position next to Raymond, watched fascinated by the resemblance between them, the same intense eyes, the same natural elegance in their movements. Luciana, Raymond finally responded, his voice carefully neutral. It's been a long time. Too long, she admitted, then turned her gaze to Sierra. Who's the girl? Her name is Sierra, Raymond explained, placing a protective hand on the little girl's shoulder. She found the baby this morning. She saved his life. Luciana's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you, she whispered, reaching down to kneel in front of Sierra. Thank you for saving him. The girl looked at her distrustfully, instinctively closer to Raymond. Do you know the baby? She asked directly, with the frankness of children. Luciana hesitated for a moment, looking at her father as if seeking guidance. Finally, she nodded. Yes, she admitted. I know him. Raymond felt his heart accelerate. Is he your son? He asked, fearing the answer. Luciana shook her head. No, Dad. He's not my son. She paused as if gathering courage. He's my grandson. The silence that followed this statement was so dense you could almost cut it with a knife. Raymond slumped into a chair, his mind working frantically to process this information. Your grandson? He repeated finally. But that would mean that my son is alive, Luciana completed, tears rolling down her cheeks. Matthew is alive, Dad, and he has a son. Raymond closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed by the emotions. Matthew, the baby lost after the accident, the grandson whose disappearance had shattered his family, alive, and now a father. Explain yourself, Luciana, he demanded, his voice harsher than he intended. How is it possible? Where has he been all these years? And why did his son appear abandoned in a tree this morning? Sierra, sensing the growing tension, instinctively moved closer to Raymond. Luciana noticed, and with a sigh stood up and took a seat opposite her father. It's a long and complicated story, Dad, she began, and I'm not proud of my role in it. We have time, Raymond replied, gesturing for her to continue. Luciana took a deep breath and began her tale. After the accident, as you know, I lost my memory. I didn't remember my husband, my son, not even you, Dad. The doctors said it was temporary, that the memories would gradually return, but months passed and I was still blank. She paused for a moment as if reliving that painful time. One night years ago I had a dream. I saw a child, a teenager, calling me Mom. I woke up crying with the certainty that it was real, that my son was alive somewhere. From that moment on, I started to remember, fragments at first, then clearer memories. And I remembered something crucial. The night of the accident, Matthew wasn't with us in the car. Raymond leaned forward, each word from his daughter reawakening old wounds. What do you mean? We all believed. The police said. The police found remains of Matthew's stroller in the wrecked vehicle and assumed he was there. But that wasn't so, Dad. That night I argued with Charles, my husband. We were going through a bad time financially and as a couple. He wanted us to give Matthew up for adoption, said we couldn't afford him, that he deserved a better life. I refused. The argument escalated. I took Matthew and fled the house, determined to come and ask you for help. Luciana paused, her eyes lost in the memories. On the way, I stopped at a diner to calm down and call you. I left Matthew with a waitress while I went to the restroom. When I came back, Charles was there. He convinced me to talk, to try to work things out. We left Matthew with the waitress for a few more minutes and went out to talk in the car. That's when the accident happened. You're saying you left Matthew at the diner? Raymond asked, incredulous. Yes, Luciana admitted, shame evident on her face. When the accident happened, Charles died instantly. I was left unconscious with amnesia. No one knew we had left our baby at that diner. By the time the police reconstructed the events, days had passed and Matthew had disappeared. Sierra followed the story with fascination, her agile mind connecting the dots. And what happened to the baby? To Matthew? She asked. Luciana looked at the girl, surprised by her insight. That's what I've been trying to find out all these years since I recovered my memory. I hired private detectives, searched all the adoption records, followed any lead, no matter how small, and finally, recently, I found him. Where? Raymond asked, his voice barely a whisper. Right here in this city. He was adopted by the Mendoza family, grew up with another name, without knowing anything about his true origin. His name is Diego now, and he's barely 20 years old. He's a good kid, Dad. Despite everything, he's had a good life. Raymond assimilated each word, his heart a mixture of pain for the lost years and relief knowing that his grandson had grown up well. And the baby? He asked, returning to the present. The baby that Sierra found? Luciana's face clouded over. That's where the story gets complicated. Diego, Matthew, met a young woman named Isabel. They fell in love. She got pregnant. But her family didn't approve of the relationship, said he wasn't good enough for their daughter. They pressured her to abandon the baby, to give him up for adoption without Diego knowing. He's been desperately looking for them for days, without knowing what happened. "And how did you find out about the baby's abandonment?" Raymond inquired, increasingly confused. "Isabel contacted me this morning. She's regretful, desperate. She confessed that her brother, following orders from her father, took the baby and abandoned him in the park, intending for someone to find him and be taken to social services. But something went wrong. The brother was angry, resentful, and, instead of leaving him safe, he hung him from a tree," Sierra completed, remembering the terrifying moment when she had found the little one. Luciana nodded, her eyes filled with horror and shame. "It's unforgivable, I know. Isabel is devastated. When she called me to tell me what happened, I had already heard on the news about a baby found in the park. I came immediately." "And the locket?" Raymond asked. "The baby was wearing the family locket, the same one we gave Matthew when he was born." "He recognized it," Luciana explained. "Diego has always worn it without knowing its true meaning. When his son was born, he wanted him to wear it too. It's as if, unconsciously, he knew that the locket connected him to his roots, to his real family." A silence filled with meaning pervaded the room. So many years of separation, of pain, of searching, and now, by a twist of fate, or perhaps by something more than mere chance, the pieces were beginning to fall into place. "Where is he now?" Raymond finally asked. "Where is Matthew? Diego?" "He's looking for Isabel," Luciana replied. "He doesn't know his son has been found. He doesn't know he's here, safe. We have to let him know," Raymond said, standing up. "And we also need to talk to the authorities about what happened. The baby's abandonment was a criminal act." Luciana nodded, accepting the gravity of the situation. "I know, Dad. But first, can we see the baby? Diego and Isabel haven't decided on a name yet. Maybe we could suggest something." Raymond looked at his daughter, seeing in her the young woman he had lost so many years ago. Despite the pain and the secrets, she was still his Luciana. He nodded slowly. "Yes, let's go see the little one. He's stable now, thanks to Sierra." The three headed to the NICU where the baby rested peacefully, oblivious to the family drama unfolding around him. Through the glass, Sierra watched the little one with fascination, thinking about how strange life was. She, who had never had a family of her own, had been crucial in bringing this one together. "He's beautiful," Luciana whispered, tears of emotion rolling down her cheeks. "He looks so much like Matthew when he was a baby." Raymond nodded, remembering his newborn grandson. "He has our family's eyes," he observed. "The same as you, as me as Matthew." A nurse approached them, informing them that the baby was responding extremely well and could soon leave the incubator. "He's a fighter," the nurse commented with admiration. "He's overcome a terrible experience, but he's not giving up." "Like his father," Luciana said proudly, "and like the brave girl who saved him." Sierra blushed at the compliment, feeling strangely connected to that little being. The moment was interrupted by the hurried arrival of a young couple. The boy, in his 20s, had the same elegant bearing as Raymond and the intense eyes of Luciana. The girl, pale and with obvious signs of having cried, leaned on him as if she were afraid of collapsing at any moment. "Mom!" exclaimed the young man upon seeing Luciana. "They called me from Isabel's house. They told me everything. Is it true? Is my son here? Is he safe?" Luciana approached her son, taking his trembling hands in hers. "Yes, Diego. He's here. He's safe, and there's someone else you should meet." She turned to Raymond, who watched the scene paralyzed, unable to believe that he was, at last, in front of his lost grandson. "Diego, this is Raymond Valverde, your grandfather." The young man's eyes widened in astonishment, his gaze traveling from Raymond's face to his own, recognizing the resemblance, feeling a connection that went beyond words. "Grandfather," he murmured, the words sounding strange and familiar at the same time on his lips. Raymond took a step forward, opening his arms in a welcoming gesture. Diego didn't hesitate for a second to step into them, embracing the man he didn't know he had been searching for all his life. The family circle seemed complete, but Sierra, watching from the sidelines, suddenly felt like she was superfluous. This was a family moment, intimate, and she was a stranger. Discreetly, she began to back away, ready to slip away quietly and return to the streets she knew. But a voice stopped her. "Where are you going, Sierra?" It was Raymond, who had broken away from the embrace with Diego and was now looking at her intently. I think it's better if I leave," the girl replied, uncomfortable. "This is a family reunion and You saved my great-grandson," Raymond interrupted, approaching her. "Without you, this reunion wouldn't be possible. You're part of this story, Sierra. Part of our family now, if you want to be." The girl looked at Raymond in disbelief, and then at Luciana and Diego, who nodded in agreement. "We want to meet the heroine who rescued our son," said Isabel, speaking for the first time, her voice sweet and sincere. Sierra felt something warm expand in her chest. Was this what it felt like to belong, to be important to someone? Can I see the baby up close?" she asked timidly. "Of course," replied the nurse, who had remained discreetly to one side. "In fact, I think he's ready for brief visits. If your family agrees, you can go in with one of them." Everyone looked at Sierra, waiting for her decision. The girl, overwhelmed by so many new emotions, looked at Raymond for guidance. "Will you go with me?" she asked in a small voice. Raymond smiled, taking her hand. "It would be an honor." "Sierra." As they prepared to enter the NICU, Sierra thought about how extraordinary this day had been. It had started like any other, waking up alone under the sky, looking for food and shelter. And now she was here, surrounded by people who looked at her with gratitude and affection, about to hold a baby who, in some mysterious way, she had been destined to find. The nurse guided them to the incubator where the little one rested. Carefully, he took the baby and placed him in Raymond's arms. "Support his little head," the professional indicated. "Like that, perfect." Raymond looked at his great-grandson with infinite adoration and then leaned down so that Sierra could see him better. "Look, little miracle," he whispered to the baby. "This is Sierra, your guardian angel." The girl extended a trembling hand and stroked the baby's soft cheek. He opened his eyes, looking at her with that ancient wisdom that seems to inhabit all newborns. "Hello," Sierra said softly. "We met in strange circumstances, didn't we? But now everything will be okay. You have a family that loves you, and you have one now too," Raymond completed, looking at her intently. "If that's what you want, Sierra." The girl looked up at the doctor, surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked, barely daring to hope. "I mean that my home and my heart are open to you," Raymond replied simply. "No one should be alone in this world, and least of all a brave and kind girl like you." Sierra felt the tears, those that she had held back for so many years of loneliness and survival, finally overflowing. "Really?" she whispered. "Could I live with you? Have a home?" Raymond nodded, his own vision blurred by emotion. "A home, an education, and all the love you deserve," he promised. "It's the least I can offer you after what you've done for our family." The baby, as if understanding the importance of the moment, let out a little gurgle of approval. Everyone laughed, feeling that something new and beautiful was being born in that instant. Outside, through the glass, Luciana, Diego, and Isabel watched the scene with emotion. The Valverde family, for so long fragmented by tragedy, was beginning to rebuild itself, now with two new and unexpected members, a baby who needed a name and a girl who needed a home. And as the sun began to set over the city, painting the sky with golden and purple hues, Sierra thought of her grandma, of the stories she told her about angels and miracles. Maybe she had been guiding her all this time, preparing her for this moment, for this family that was now receiving her with open arms. "I think," said Diego, approaching the window of the NICU, "that I know what I want to name my son." Everyone looked at him expectantly. "Angel," he announced in a clear voice, "because an angel found him and saved him." Isabel nodded, her eyes bright with tears and hope. "Angel Valverde Mendoza," she said, testing the name. "It sounds perfect." And so, in the midst of extraordinary circumstances, a new chapter began for all of them, intertwined by destiny, united by love and blessed by an unexpected miracle. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the room that now belonged to Sierra. The girl woke up slowly, still surprised by the softness of the sheets and the comfort of the mattress. 3 months had passed since that extraordinary day when she found little Angel hanging from a tree, but sometimes she still feared it was all a dream, that she would wake up again under the open sky, alone and hungry. She got up and went to the window. From there she could see the garden of Raymond's house, carefully tended with roses in bloom and a small pond where goldfish swam. She smiled, remembering how she had run barefoot among those flowers the day Raymond brought her home, after completing the temporary custody paperwork. "Good morning, Sierra," greeted Raymond, peeking into her door with a warm smile. "Ready for the big day?" The girl nodded, although her stomach twisted with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Today was the day of the final hearing, where the judge would officially decide her fate and Angel's. After the discovery of the truth about the baby's abandonment, a series of investigations and legal proceedings had been unleashed. Isabel's brother, who confessed to the baby's abandonment, faced serious charges. Isabel's father, who had orchestrated the initial plan to give the baby up for adoption, was also under investigation for coercion. Isabel, regretful and determined to rectify her error, had fully cooperated with the authorities, which would probably spare her from major charges. She and Diego, now reconciled and more united than ever by the love for their son, were fighting to prove that, despite their youth, they were capable of raising him with responsibility and love. "Don't be nervous," Raymond reassured her, reading the worry on her face. "Everything will be all right, I promise you." Sierra smiled, trusting him. In these months she had learned that Raymond always kept his promises. He had promised to give her a home, and he had done so. He had promised to help her recover her lost schooling, and now she had tutors preparing her to integrate into the education system. He had promised that she would never be hungry or cold again, and that had been the case. "Will everyone come to the courthouse?" she asked as she headed to the bathroom to get ready. "Yes, Luciana, Diego, Isabel, and of course little Angel. We're a family, Sierra. We're in this together." Family. The word still felt strange to her, like a new shoe that doesn't quite fit the foot, but every day she felt more comfortable. With it, more part of something bigger than herself. After breakfast, Raymond and Sierra headed to the courthouse. The girl wore her best dress, one that Luciana had bought her especially for this occasion. Her hair, once tangled and unkempt, now fell in soft waves over her shoulders, carefully combed. At the entrance of the courthouse, Luciana, Diego, and Isabel were waiting for them. The latter held Angel, who had grown considerably in these months. The baby, now chubby and smiling, waved his little hands upon seeing Sierra, as if he recognized her. "My little savior wants to greet his guardian angel," Isabel said with a smile, bringing the baby closer so that Sierra could take him in her arms. The girl received him carefully, marveling as always at the special bond they shared. Sometimes, she felt that Angel looked at her with a wisdom that transcended his age, as if he understood the importance of what had happened that day in the park. "He's beautiful," she commented, kissing his forehead, "and heavier every day." "He eats like a champ," Diego confirmed with paternal pride. "The doctors say he's perfectly healthy with no after-effects from what happened." "It's a miracle," added Luciana, placing a hand on Sierra's shoulder. "Two miracles, actually." They entered the courthouse together, a family united by extraordinary circumstances. The room was full. Social workers, representatives of children's services, the defense lawyers, and the prosecution. There were also journalists, attracted by the unusual nature of the case, although Raymond had insisted that the privacy of the minors be protected. The judge, a middle-aged woman with compassionate but firm eyes, presided over the session. After the initial formalities, she first called Angel's case. Diego and Isabel stepped forward, holding their son. They testified, explaining the circumstances of the birth and subsequent abandonment of the baby. Isabel spoke in a broken but clear voice about the family pressure she had suffered, her weakness in giving in to her father's demands, and her deep regret for not having protected her son from the beginning. My greatest desire now, she concluded, is to be able to raise my son with Diego, to prove that we are the parents Angel deserves and that he will never have to suffer for our bad decisions again. Diego, for his part, spoke of his own story. How he had been adopted without knowing it, how he had found his biological mother and his grandfather, and how this chain of events had taught him the value of family and second chances. We are not perfect, he admitted honestly, but we love our son more than anything in the world, and we have an incredible support network in my mother and my grandfather. Several experts testified next, psychologists who had evaluated the young couple, social workers who had visited their home, doctors who had treated Angel. All agreed that with the right support, Diego and Isabel were perfectly capable of raising their son in a loving and stable environment. Finally, the judge rendered her decision. Angel would remain under the legal custody of his biological parents, Diego and Isabel, with a 6-month supervision period by social services. In addition, it was established that they should attend parenting classes and that Angel should receive regular medical checkups. The joy in the room was palpable. Isabel hugged Diego with tears of happiness, while Raymond and Luciana looked at each other with satisfaction, knowing that they had helped their grandson and great-grandson stay together as a family. But the hearing was not over. Now it was Sierra's turn. The girl stood up when the judge called her name, her legs trembling slightly beneath her new dress. Raymond stood up beside her, offering his hand to give her courage. "Sierra," the judge began in a kind voice, "I have read your file and I am very impressed by your bravery and your kindness. Not many children or even adults would have acted as you did upon finding baby Angel." Sierra blushed at the praise, not yet accustomed to receiving recognition for her actions. "Mr. Valverde," the judge continued, addressing Raymond, "you have requested legal custody of Sierra with the intention of full adoption. Can you explain your reasons?" Raymond nodded, his voice firm but filled with emotion. "Your Honor, when I met Sierra, I saw in her an extraordinary spirit. A girl who, despite the difficulties she has faced, maintains a kindness and a strength that inspires me. She not only saved my great-grandson, she has not only given me the opportunity to reunite with my lost grandson, but she has brought a new light into my life." He paused, looking at Sierra with affection. "I have been a doctor all my life, dedicated to caring for others. Now, at this stage of my life, I feel that I can offer Sierra the home, the education, and the love she deserves. This is not charity. Your Honor, it is a privilege for me to be her family." The judge nodded and then turned directly to Sierra. "And you, Sierra, what do you think of all this? Do you want to live with Dr. Valverde permanently?" The girl took a breath, searching for the right words to express what she felt. "I never had a real family, Your Honor. Only my grandma, but she went to heaven a long time ago. Living with Dr. Raymond, it's like having a home for the first time. He teaches me things, he reads me stories, and he never makes me feel like a bother. And now I also have Luciana, Diego, Isabel, and little Angel." She looked at Raymond, her eyes shining with emotion. "If I could choose a family in the whole world, I would choose them." The judge smiled, visibly moved by the girl's sincerity. "Given the favorable report from social services, and considering the evident bond between you, I grant legal custody of Sierra to Dr. Raymond Valverde, with a view to full adoption within 1 year, if both parties still desire it." She gently tapped her gavel, sealing the decision. "And if you'll allow me a personal comment," she added, removing her glasses, "I think you are both very fortunate to have found each other." Leaving the courthouse, Sierra felt like she was floating. It was official. She had a home, a family, a future. The uncertainty that had been her constant companion for so many years began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of belonging that she had never known. "Are you happy?" Raymond asked her as they headed to the car. "Very happy," she replied with a radiant smile. But, Raymond encouraged her to continue, "but I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been in the park that morning, if I hadn't heard Angel crying. Sometimes I think it was destiny, or something like that." Raymond nodded thoughtfully. "There are things we cannot fully explain, Sierra, Let's call it destiny, providence, or simply an extraordinary chain of coincidences. What matters is that you were there, that you listened, that you acted. And thanks to that, our lives changed forever, in the best possible way. That night, Raymond's house was filled with laughter and celebration. They had organized a small party to commemorate the favorable court decisions. Luciana, Diego, Isabel, and little Angel would stay overnight, turning the occasion into a true family gathering. After dinner, while the adults conversed in the living room, Sierra slipped out to the garden with Angel in her arms. The baby, satisfied and sleepy after his bottle, looked at her with his big dark eyes so similar to those of Diego and Raymond. "You know, little one," Sierra whispered to him, sitting on a bench under the starry sky. "You and I are very lucky. We found a family when we needed it most." Angel responded with a babble, as if he understood perfectly what she was saying. "My grandma always said that angels watch over us," the girl continued, gently rocking the baby. "I think she guided me to you that morning, and now you have guided me to them, to our family." The baby smiled, a toothless and perfect smile that illuminated his face. "I promise you something, Angel," Sierra said in a solemn voice. "I will always be there for you. We will be like siblings, you know? I'll teach you everything I learn. I'll always protect you, and I'll never, ever let you feel alone." She leaned down to kiss his forehead, sealing that promise under the silent witness of the stars. She didn't notice that Raymond was watching her from the garden door, moved by the scene. The doctor thought about the strange paths of fate, about how the tragedy of so many years ago, the loss of his grandson, the accident, Luciana's amnesia, had finally led to this moment of perfect happiness. "Everything all right?" Luciana asked, approaching her father. "Better than all right," he replied, pointing to where Sierra was still talking in whispers with Angel. "Look, Luciana, that's a miracle." Luciana watched the scene and nodded, perfectly understanding what her father meant. "Two lives that could have been lost," she murmured. "Two lives that saved each other. And that saved us in the process," Raymond added. They remained in silence, enjoying the moment, until Diego and Isabel joined them. "Is everything okay with Angel?" Isabel asked, always attentive to her baby. "He's in the best hands," Raymond replied with a smile. "Sierra has a special gift with him." Diego nodded, watching the girl who had saved his son. "It's as if they were destined to meet," he commented. "Maybe they were," Raymond said. "Maybe we all were." Finally, they approached Sierra, who looked up with a smile as she saw them coming. "I think our little one is ready to sleep," she said, noticing that Angel had closed his eyes. Isabel took her son carefully, kissing his head. "Thank you for taking care of him, Sierra," she whispered, so as not to wake the baby. The girl shrugged, downplaying it. "We're family," she replied simply, as if that explained everything. And in a way, it did. 1 year later, the garden of Raymond's house was decorated for a party. Colored balloons floated tied to the chairs, a large banner hung between two trees, and a table full of gifts awaited under the cool shade. It was a special day on 2 counts, Angel's first birthday and the official completion of Sierra's adoption process. The entire Valverde family had gathered to celebrate. Sierra, now transformed into a healthy and happy girl, helped Luciana to place the last decorations. Her hair, longer and shinier, was gathered in a braid adorned with fresh flowers. Her eyes, once cautious and sad, now sparkled with joy and confidence. "Do you think Angel will like his party?" she asked Luciana as they placed colored plates on the table. "He'll love it," Luciana replied confidently, "although he'll probably be more excited about the wrapping paper than the gifts themselves." Both laughed, knowing how true that was. Angel, who was already taking his first wobbly steps, had an infinite fascination with paper, especially if it made noise when crumpled. Diego and Isabel arrived shortly after, with Angel dressed for the occasion in a little suit that made him look like a tiny gentleman. The child, seeing Sierra, stretched his arms out to her, calling her with his baby talk, "Mia! Mia!" It was his way of saying her name, the first he had learned after Mom and Dad. Sierra took him in her arms, spinning him in the air as he laughed with that crystal-clear laughter that melted all hearts. "Happy birthday, little rascal," exclaimed Sierra, kissing his chubby cheeks. "Are you ready for your big day?" Angel responded with a joyful babble, kicking with excitement. Raymond watched the scene from the porch, his heart filled to overflowing. In this year, he had seen his family not only reunite but flourish in ways he never would have imagined. Luciana, his daughter, had recovered not only her lost son, but also the joy she thought extinguished. Diego and Isabel, overcoming the initial difficulties, had become loving and responsible parents, sharing an apartment near Raymond's house so that little Angel could be close to all his family. And Sierra, his adopted daughter, had gone from being a lonely and distrustful child to a bright, loving, and full-of-life young woman. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" Luciana asked, approaching him with a tray of refreshments. "About how lucky I am," Raymond replied simply. "About how life can surprise us when we least expect it." The party passed with laughter, games, and emotional moments. Angel, with his mother's help, blew out his first candle and applauded along with everyone, although without fully understanding what they were celebrating. Then came the moment of the gifts, where, just as Luciana had predicted, the child had more fun with the wrappers than with the toys. When it came time for Sierra to open her special gift, everyone fell silent. Raymond handed her a small package, wrapped in silver paper. "This is for you, daughter, to commemorate that you are officially a Valverde." Sierra took the package with trembling hands. Upon unwrapping it, she found a velvet box. Opening it, she caught her breath. Inside was a silver locket identical to the one Angel had been wearing the day she found him. "It's a family tradition," Raymond explained. "Each new member receives one. Angel's was the one that belonged to his father, Diego. This one is new, made especially for you." Sierra took out the locket with reverence. On one side was the Valverde, family crest. On the other, an inscription engraved, "Sierra Valverde, our unexpected miracle." It's beautiful," she murmured, with tears of happiness welling up in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Raymond replied, helping her to place the locket around her neck. "Just remember that this locket is a symbol that you will always belong to this family, no matter what." The girl threw herself into his arms, hugging him with all her strength. Luciana, Diego, Isabel, and little Angel joined the hug, forming a perfect circle of love and belonging. Later, as the sun began to set and the guests had left, Sierra sat in her favorite place in the garden, the bench under the big oak. Angel, exhausted by the emotions of the day, slept peacefully in his mother's lap, who chatted quietly with Diego and Luciana. Raymond sat next to Sierra, watching his family with satisfaction. "Do you know what day it is today, in addition to Angel's birthday and your official adoption?" he asked. Sierra shook her head, intrigued. "It's exactly 1 year and 3 months since you found Angel in the park. The day our lives changed forever." The girl nodded, remembering that dawn that now seemed so distant and at the same time so vivid in her memory. "Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the park that morning?" Sierra reflected. "Or if I hadn't heard Angel crying?" "I wonder too," Raymond admitted. "There are moments in life, Sierra, that act like hinges. Small decisions that completely change the course of our existence. Your decision to go to the park that morning, to investigate that cry, to climb that tree to save an unknown baby. That was a hinge not only for you but for all of us." Sierra nodded, understanding the depth of what Raymond was saying. "My grandma always said that things happen for a reason," she commented. "That there are no coincidences, only paths that cross when they are meant to cross." "Your grandma was a wise woman," Raymond smiled, "and I think she would be very proud of the young woman you are becoming, Sierra." The girl smiled unconsciously, touching the locket that now hung from her neck. If she closed her eyes, she could almost feel the presence of her grandma, smiling from some distant and beautiful place, satisfied to see that her granddaughter had finally found her home. "I think she's happy," Sierra whispered. "I think she's watching us right now, all of us, and she's happy for me." "Perhaps she was," Raymond said. "Perhaps we all were." Raymond put an arm around her shoulders, drawing her to him in a protective and loving gesture. "I'm sure that's right," he affirmed. "And we're happy too, Sierra. Immensely happy that you're part of our family." Together they watched the sun set over the garden, painting the sky with golden and orange hues. The gentle breeze swayed the leaves of the trees, creating a serene and comforting melody. Angel briefly woke up from his nap, looked at Sierra with his sleepy eyes, gave her a toothless smile, and fell asleep again in Isabel's arms. In that perfect moment, Sierra understood that life at times gives us second chances, that even after loneliness and abandonment, belonging and love can arrive. That miracles, those extraordinary moments that change the course of our lives, sometimes come disguised as challenges, as difficult decisions, as small gestures of kindness that seem insignificant, but expand like ripples in a pond, touching lives, healing wounds, uniting what was separated. Sierra Valverde, the street urchin who once roamed the streets alone, had found her place in the world. And as the sun finished setting on the horizon, promising to be reborn the next day with new hopes and possibilities, she knew with certainty that this was only the beginning of a life full of love, of adventures, of learning. A life alongside the family that fate, or perhaps something more powerful and mysterious, had given her at the precise moment, neither before nor after, exactly when her heart was ready to receive the unexpected miracle of belonging.